Transmigrated as a disabled protagonist, how should I continue the script? Chapter 21, The Cost of Treatment. Before searching for Rokudo Mukuro, Dazai Osamu got in touch with another illusionist broker. To be precise, the person was responsible for handling transactions between both parties. That's correct. The world is so vast, and illusionists are not in short supply, but Rokudo Mukuro could be said to be the one illusionist with no background. Precisely for this reason, the special division prioritized recommending Rokudo Mukuro to Dazai Osamu, even intending to use intel about Vongola Decimo as leverage to recruit this man, who despises the Italian mafia. At present, Japan lacks illusionist, and the Japanese government is highly eager for someone who can master the art of illusion. Having an illusionist is akin to possessing someone with excellent control over psychic abilities. Everyone knows that when a psychic ability user loses control, the result is a disaster. Yumino Kyusaku is the best example of this. Despite possessing destructive power, he was still sealed away by the organization, not allowed to roam free and disrupt societal stability. In terms of stability, an illusionist surpasses a psychic ability user by a large margin. The Japanese government is closely monitoring the unique nature of Rokudo Mukuro, who is the result of human experimentation, showing no loyalty to Italy. Inevitably, valuable experimental data remains within him. Moreover, the Japanese government has little dealings with the Italy's mafia. No matter how the internal conflict in the Vongola family unfolds, once they protect their own, it's like feeding the fat meat directly into their mouths. Dazai Osamu quickly understood the roundabout nature of these matters, his thoughts spinning rapidly, no less cunning than those seasoned old foxes. He specifically sought out a broker because he intended to achieve his goal indirectly. Name your price. Before him stood a figure who was refreshingly detached from the world, a person who worked solely for money, the one and only master illusionist, Maman, of the Italy-based Vongola family, Varia's independent assassination squad's missed guardian, a top-tier illusionist. The broker coldly replied over the phone, for a one-time illusion setup, the starting price is $2 million. Depending on the size of the location and complexity, the price may increase. For a one-time assassination using illusions, the starting price is $5 million, with the number of targets and difficulty affecting the cost. For a one-time memory alteration, the starting price is $8 million. Dazai Osamu decisively and fluently asked, "Why is everything single-use?" The broker responded, "The illusion is connected to the illusionist when it's performed. Using it once reassures both parties." Furthermore, the broker, hearing the overly youthful voice of the client on the phone, became suspicious. "Sir, you're contacting me as a member of the Japanese port mafia. May I ask what position you're in, and who are you working for?" Dazai Osamu, borrowing authority, replied, "Mori-san is my legal guardian." The broker, with a bit of imagination, understood that Mori-san referred to Mori Ogai, but anything more specific was unclear. The port mafia was in a period of chaos. The illusionist is accepting a commission to treat the body, right? Dazai Osamu didn't beat around the bush. The broker, upon hearing this, became less enthusiastic. "Maman-san is the top illusionist of the era. Healing the body is no joke. Every year, countless wealthy individuals with failing body parts flock to him like a herd of ducks. His prices are extremely high, so I wouldn't recommend making such a large transaction on your first deal." Dazai Osamu thought to himself, "Are you underestimating the Japanese port mafia, or are you underestimating Mori-san's financial resources?" Mori Ogai, working tirelessly at the port mafia headquarters. He really doesn't have any money. How much? Dazai Osamu calmly gave the broker a bit of confidence. "Are you sure you want to proceed with this transaction, sir? I must inform you, creating an artificial heart with this structure, calculated by time units, will cost no less than $1 million. The broker, after repeatedly confirming his intentions, took a deep breath and said, "Please wait a moment. I cannot make the decision on this deal." "Moo, are you the one looking for me, the new client?" A few minutes later, a new voice came through the microphone, speaking in slightly strange Japanese. After this encounter with the port mafia, Dazai Osamu's pupils slightly contracted upon hearing the name Arcobaleno. Could the rumored curse that shrinks people truly exist? The person speaking had a voice that was both childish and cold. Physical body parts repair is accepted, but no brain, no eyes, no ears, and nothing related to functional abilities. No guarantee that the illusion will remain effective. If it loses effectiveness, only half the treatment cost will be refunded. This string of refusals snapped Dazai Osamu back to reality. Dazai Osamu couldn't help but glance at Hyakkimaru, who had also been judged as cursed. Once again, the black-haired youth, having just completed another demon slaying, sheathed his sword. Today, his kimono had transformed into one with a black goldfish pattern, the sash tied securely around his waist, while the bandages on his chest were exposed. The contrast added both a sense of restraint and an extra touch of wild, murderous recklessness. In just one short month, the number of evil entities in Yokohama that could be counted on one hand were completely slain by Hyakkimaru. Things like the earthbound spirits that are invisible to the naked eye and other demons and monsters had all vanished without a trace, leaving the air even a little cleaner. Those things, attracted by Yokohama's aura of death, hadn't even had the chance to take root before they were so terrified by Hyakkimaru, who frequently roamed the city, that they fled overnight. To the monsters, Hyakkimaru was far more bizarre and terrifying than many of the great demons that had trained for years. A being that resembled a human yet was not human. Dazai Osamu collected his thoughts and asked, "Maman-san, it's really impressive that you speak Japanese so well. The brain is the most complex part of the human body, so not accepting that is understandable, but why not the eyes and ears as well?" In Italy, while coincidentally in contact with a broker, Maman leisurely floated in midair, counting money in his hand as he spoke to his phone. When it comes to sensory organs, no illusionist would easily take that risk, and those who dare to accept it. The baby beneath the triangular hood smiled darkly. "I can guarantee they're nothing but third-rate trash from who knows where." Illusions affect the five senses of a person, so isn't it logically contradictory to cure the five senses? A person lacking one or more of the five senses is essentially immune to the effects of illusions. The five senses? Dazai Osamu pondered the illusionist's weakness, but understood what Maman's meant was that they wouldn't easily accept such a case. It didn't mean they couldn't do it, this was a sign of supreme confidence from a top-tier illusionist. "May I ask, beyond the five senses, what about body parts like limbs, or internal organs?" "Accepts." Maman agreed without hesitation. How much money can one make by carrying out an assassination these days? Still, earning extra from this kind of income surely brings in even more money. Money-loving Maman seemed to envision this spendthrift handing him a huge wad of cash, US dollars rustling as they poured toward him. His tone rose a few notches. "How long are we talking, days, months, or years?" Dazai Osamu. "So, this is a membership subscription plan." Without any further trouble, Dazai Osamu used his emotional intelligence to calm Maman down, leaving a way out for himself, ensuring Maman didn't realize that he, in fact, didn't have a single US dollar on him. After finishing this phone call, Dazai Osamu deeply felt how poor he truly was. Why didn't I realize before how important money is? No. Money had always been important, it's just that he had never worked consistently, so he didn't care much about material conditions. "Hyakkimaru, let me auction you off just once," Dazai Osamu said with full enthusiasm. "Someone would definitely want to take care of someone like you. I'll sell you at a high price, then get you back. After a few rounds, I'll have enough money to cover the cost of treating your limbs and spine." "Huh? Where are you going so quickly?" Hyakkimaru walked in a direction that seemed endless, and before they realized it, they had arrived at the Yokohama Chinatown area at the foot of the mountain. This area was rich with over 200 specialty restaurants run by Chinese families, and the streets were bustling with tourists and pedestrians. Together with Kobe Nankin Maji and Nagasaki Shinchi Chinatown, it was known as one of Japan's 3 major Chinatowns. Aren't you afraid of crowded places? Dazai Osamu, tired from walking, had taken off his black coat, as the heat was unbearable. He rested his chin on Hyakkimaru's shoulder, exhaling as he tiptoed to get a better look ahead. Wow, so many tourists here. Are they all just shopping and eating? Hyakkimaru was similarly startled by the crowd. He simply followed the light of the life flames by instinct, and soon saw a dense cluster of flames ahead. A campfire banquet? Humans used their life force to ignite the darkness, illuminating the world. The flames filled the area with life and vitality, a grand spectacle that deeply shook the strange and solitary Hyakkimaru. Since when had he become a part of the crowd, able to feel genuine joy from within while standing in the bustling streets? Speaking of food, Dazai Osamu was also hungry, urging, "Let's go over there." Hyakkimaru stood there, frozen. Fire. Too big. Dazai Osamu was in charge of pushing this stubborn individual forward, as if playing with a puppet. He pushed one step, the other would take one step, their movements uncoordinated, giving passers-by the impression of two young men sulking at each other. Only Dazai Osamu understood him, and even wanted to knock some sense into this eccentric companion. As a friend, he thought. His actions shouldn't be wrong, right? From choosing the restaurant to entering the private booth for a meal, Dazai Osamu was careful not to provoke the waitstaff. Teasing Hyakkimaru was amusing, but what would it mean for strangers to see Hyakkimaru's appearance? What right did ordinary people have to pity Hyakkimaru? Is this a soup dumpling? Dazai Osamu picked up a steaming dumpling with his chopsticks and popped it into his mouth. No, there's broth inside, it's a soup-filled dumpling. Across from him, Hyakkimaru moved his mask upward, relaxing his stiff posture under the partition of the private booth. He ran his hand along the back of the chair and scooted forward a bit. Dazai Osamu, using the shared chopsticks, placed a slightly cooled dumpling in front of Hyakkimaru's teeth. Hyakkimaru instinctively opened his mouth to bite the food, only to have Dazai Osamu tap his teeth with the chopsticks. "You can't bite it, the broth will spill out." Hyakkimaru paused for a moment, then adjusted by opening his mouth wider, finishing the entire wet bun, somewhat uncomfortable with being fed. He had always been self-sufficient, as his adoptive father had taught him to learn to live independently. Dazai Osamu tapped his teeth lightly again. Chew. Dororo, eating like this is troublesome. If Hyakkimaru had a face, at this moment he would have been crying, unable to resist Dororo's demands. After a few more rounds, Dazai Osamu smugly said, "I knew you'd understand what I meant." Such a super smart puppet. If only he'd behave a little more, and stop pretending to be completely clueless, it would be perfect. After finishing a satisfying meal at the Chinese restaurant, Dazai Osamu poked his head out from the booth and asked the server for 2 bamboo skewers. On one skewer, he wrote, "Maman," and on the other, "Rokudo Mukuro." He then placed both skewers within Hyakkimaru's reach and, with great enthusiasm, started playing a lottery game. "Hyakkimaru, you pick one. The one on the left demands money, and the one on the right takes a life." Maman loves wealth, and only an enormous amount of US dollars could satisfy his appetite. Meanwhile, Rokudo Mukuro had destroyed the mafia family, likely wanting nothing less than the life of Vangala Decimo. Dazai Osamu, neither afraid of losing money nor his life, spoke with a deep meaning. "I've noticed that your luck has always been quite good, much better than mine. It's as if the heavens themselves don't want anything bad to happen to you. Why not make the decision yourself? Which illusionist can help you restore your body?" Hyakkimaru stared straight at him, though his gaze slightly drifted off Dazai Osamu's trajectory. Dazai Osamu, puzzled, asked, "What are you looking at?" He looked around and realized that the other was seemingly gazing at the entrance to the main hall, where a statue of the Bodhisattva of Compassion was enshrined, facing north while sitting southward, far from the diners. In Japan, Buddhism is widespread, and most people know a few names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. However, this Chinese restaurant displayed a statue of Guan Yin, the Bodhisattva of Compassion. In his heart and mind, Hyakkimaru, through the gaps in the hollow wooden box beside him, saw a gold-plated bodhisattva statue. Despite being placed in a slaughterhouse-like environment such as a dining hall, the statue, under years of worship by the owner, remained untouched by the filth and grease, exuding a peaceful and serene aura, blessing the faithful. This form. Is it a bodhisattva statue? The lifeless object emitted a faint green glow, reminding him of the many times he had seen a similar bodhisattva statue in his hallucinations. The statue of child-giving Guanyin holding a child, placed atop an altar, had protected him at crucial moments. If you want to take a closer look, I'll take you over there. Dazai Osamu helped him put on the mask and retrieved the bamboo skewer. When Hyakkimaru entered the main hall of the Chinese restaurant, there was already a diner who had finished their meal and was praying to the bodhisattva. The person was dressed in a crimson traditional outfit, with a graceful figure, using a fan to partially cover her face, though her feminine allure was still hard to conceal. As she turned to leave, she nearly bumped into Hyakkimaru, but Dazai Osamu raised his hand to intervene. The back of his hand accidentally brushed against her delicate skin, sending a subtle shiver through him. Dazai Osamu had seen beautiful women before, but rarely had he been so easily electrified by one. He was still young and hadn't yet reached the age where he found himself interested in young women. This young lady. He glanced at the woman in the qipao whose face was unclear, with a hint of curiosity. What's going on? Was he seeing things? It seemed like he saw something faint and indistinct on the back of her fan. Hyakkimaru suddenly grabbed his hand, squeezing it hard enough to hurt. Dazai Osamu let out a sharp tisk. A statue of Bodhisattva. In the place that they was about to worship. The compassionate statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva was shattered, its gold paint peeling off in patches, and its head fell from a great height. Thud, the sound of the hard object rolling was unmistakably clear. The decapitated head of Guanyin rolled down, neck and head severed, stopping right at Hyakkimaru's feet, almost as if replaying the scene of his birth. Dazai Osamu's gaze darkened. However, he quickly calmed down and communicated with the shop owner, clearing the suspicion that he and Hyakkimaru had damaged the Bodhisattva statue. This seemed like a minor incident. Dazai Osamu had no interest in strolling around Chinatown and took a cab back to Mori-san's clinic. Hyakkimaru wasn't in a great mood. He had wanted to pay respects to the Bodhisattva to express his gratitude for saving his life, but the statue shattered into pieces in his eyes. Later that evening, as he returned to work, Mori Ogai changed back into his white coat and scratched his head. What happened to Yaki-kun? Going to Chinatown, he got spooked. Dazai Osamu, holding a catnip stick he found somewhere, used the feather at the tip to scratch his companion, but was ignored by Hyakkimaru, who usually cooperated with him. Hyakkimaru hugged his knees, sitting on a chair, with his face turned away from Mori Ogai. Mori Ogai asked with a hint of amusement, still not used to my presence after all this time? Dazai Osamu casually replied, perhaps when Mori-san stops killing people, Hyakkimaru might accept you. Mori Ogai didn't respond to the comment, only letting out a small chuckle as he leaned against his desk. Dazai Osamu moved closer to Hyakkimaru, their foreheads nearly touching. They had escaped the surveillance at home. He handed 2 skewers over to the other. Pick one. Under the influence of Dazai Osamu's life flame, Hyakkimaru no longer dwelled on those past memories, which could hardly be called good. Is Dororo trying to comfort me? What is this in my hand? The black-haired boy, confused, drew one of the skewers. What kind of game is this? Dazai Osamu, satisfied with his idea of making Hyakkimaru draw lots, took it and saw, as expected, it was Rokudo Mukuro. Surprising, yet somehow it made sense. In order to get Maman to restore Hyakkimaru's limbs, spine, and even let him attempt to heal his 5 senses, Dazai Osamu might have to pay an astronomical price, possibly hundreds of millions of US dollars annually. Too expensive, far beyond what 14-year-old Dazai Osamu could afford. Trust him. Even Mori-san couldn't come up with that. The Port Mafia left Mori Ogai with a financially crippled organization, an empty weapons division, and various urgent, tangled situations. Perhaps in the future, Dazai Osamu could earn it back, but inevitably, his hands would be stained with darkness. Leave it to me. Dazai Osamu snapped the bamboo skewer, casually tossing it back into the bag. Hyakkimaru hugged his knees and looked at him, his breath gently swirling around. Dazai Osamu could hear the sound of breathing behind the mask, no longer anxious, as if their hearts had both calmed down. Their world was just that small, that quiet. Dazai Osamu suddenly felt that the woman in the qipao he saw during the day didn't seem as beautiful as Hyakkimaru. A delicate flower carrying poison. The only thing that wouldn't hurt him was the puppet reaching out toward him. Hyakkimaru, try to restore your face soon. Dazai Osamu reached over and brushed the bangs covering the other's face back, revealing the entire mask, falsely beautiful. But he didn't find anything wrong with feeling false. Aesthetic enhancement, up. The next day, a new statue of the Bodhisattva of Compassion appeared in the clinic. Mori Ogai, knocking on the wall here and there, temporarily set up an altar for the offering and asked him with a puzzled tone. Why do you want to offer a statue of the Bodhisattva of Compassion in the clinic? Hyakkimaru likes it. After directing the Port Mafia's boss, Dazai Osamu smiled at Mori Ogai, but not as deceitfully as usual. Mori Ogai sighed, Dazai-kun, I'm impressed. You put more effort into caring for a nearly broken puppet than most do for their cats or dogs. I thought you'd lose interest in him pretty quickly. Dazai Osamu, pretending not to know, pulled Hyakkimaru over to look at the statue of Guan-in. Hyakkimaru couldn't clearly see the figure. It seems like there's something blocking the way ahead. Dazai Osamu rubbed his chin, pondering, why can't you see it? Is it because I bought a cheap one, or is there some mysterious divine power at work? Because you're too poor to afford a gold-plated one. Mori-san. Dazai Osamu, realizing the issue, immediately shouted to Mori Ogai, the statue of Guan-in still needs to be gold-plated. No money, saving, wake up. Are we really part of the underworld? Today, the Port Mafia was still as poor and disappointing as ever, struggling through the days, eating instant noodles together. Chapter 21 End.